and is eventually representing you in Congress, will be representing one of the fastest growing districts in the country. We're playing musical chairs here. Just to give you a little background, I was invited to do this. I'm glad to do it. Yeah, I think this will be one of a number of opportunities you have to hear from these candidates, and of course later some that were not able to attend today. And I hope we hope we will facilitate a good discussion. This is a forum, not a debate, and we're going to try to keep them to the time. But we want you to to hear from these candidates, make your own impressions, tell your friends about it, and use it as you start to. To foster some decisions, but for a lot of you, this is your first opportunity, and my first opportunity to get to know some of these candidates a little better. Okay, thank you very much. Starting with, we'll just go down my left, starting with Ms. Elmers. Just introduce your name, then we'll come back and do opening statements.
And I'm Devan Barbour.
And Devan, we will start with you on that end to do opening statements.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you to the chairman, vice chairman, Jesse and Jonathan for putting this together. And thank you all for coming back from lunch to be here with you. My name's Devan Barbour. I'm a Christian. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a small business owner. Headquartered right here in Dunn, a member of Chamber of Commerce here in Harnett County. I'm the conservative Republican candidate from the 13th District, running to represent the 13th District in the United States House of Representatives. I'm glad you're all here this afternoon, but I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert. Everybody you hear from for the next couple hours is going to say the exact same thing. We're all pro-life. We're all for Second Amendment rights. We're all for lower taxes. We're all for energy independence. We all think Joe Biden's running this country into the dirt. And if we don't, we ought to be disqualified, right? I'm asking for your support because I'm from here and I'm running for here. You need a congressman that does more than just regurgitate the national talking points. You need a congressman that knows that in Dunn, a clown isn't something you just see at a circus. You need a congressman that knows that coats isn't something you put on when you get cold. And you need a congressman that knows that denim days isn't the sale at Hudson Belt the night after Thanksgiving. As Devan Barbour, I'm going to be that congressman for you because I understand that the most important part of home is looking after home. And that's why I'm running for Congress. Because I'm a member of this community and I have an investment in this community. And it's this community that I'm looking to protect, not just for the next 2 years, but for the next 20. I'm Devan Barbour, your candidate for United States House of Representatives. I appreciate you being here and I'd appreciate your vote.
Thanks everybody for their opening statement. We're going to run through a few questions here, kind of in the rapid fire. So we're looking for about a 30-second to 1 minute answer. And I want to start on the issue of Ukraine. If you could tell us one thing that the United States and the Biden administration is doing right with the situation in Ukraine, and one thing that we are doing wrong and should you do different. And we'll start with Chad, go back, and then come to you.
Thank you. Really, he's not doing anything right. He's not doing anything right. He didn't do anything right before Russia crossed their sovereign border. He hadn't done anything right since they crossed the border, whether it's not sending the arms and defensive measures that they need, or whether it's sending Kamala Harris to Poland and Romania. He ain't done nothing right. What has he done wrong? Everything. Give him the jets. Give Ukraine the jets and they can institute their own no-fly zone. Give them the jets, give them what they need, and let them fight this war, because Russia's not going to be any threat when Ukraine decimates their military. And when we support Ukraine and give them what they need to decimate Russia's military, China's watching.
It's a show of hands question. Do any of our candidates believe that U.S. Air Force based troops ought to be enforcing a no-fly zone in Ukraine?
The United States?
Yeah, the United States. Our military. Does anybody think that our military ought to be involved in a no-fly zone in Ukraine? All right, so we have some agreement there. Okay, thank you. Now, another show of hands, or not a show of hands. The first vote, if you are ultimately elected in this race, would be for what I think all of us would hope is a Republican U.S. House Speaker. Anybody here planning to not vote for the current House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy? Well, we got some agreement here. Okay, now I'm going to start with this question to Devan and work our way back. A question about our situation on the border and immigration. All of these candidates are certainly for doing something about the uncontrolled border on the South, as we've all seen. At the same time, as you drive through Johnston and Harnett counties, you still see tobacco fields. You still see people in need of labor. And closing the border does not necessarily fix the immigration system. So my question is, besides securing the border, if we could do that, what needs to happen next to make sense out of America's convoluted immigration system? Devan, we'll start with you.
So that's a fantastic question. Another minute one? That's a minute.
Give him 90 seconds on this. Give him 90 seconds on this. I don't want to be too hard here.
Step one is secure the border. Step one is finish building the wall from one into the other. And then when you build the wall, you have to enforce the wall. What is a border? A border is a line that protects a sovereign community from an outside influence that they're not interested in having. Whether it be the Ukrainian border and Putin coming in, whether it be the southern border and folks coming in, or whether it be in your congressional border and folks coming in. Sorry, I told you I'd say that. At any rate, borders have to be enforced and borders have to be secured. After you secure the border, you have to ensure that the illegal immigrants that are committing the crime, once you deport them, they don't come back. That reverts back to step one in securing the border. I'm glad you brought up agriculture. The H-2A program is a great program, and it's serving our community well. Folks don't realize through the H-2A program, we have my brother-in-law is a produce farmer here in Dunn, strawberries. When strawberries come back, he'll appreciate I plugged him. He has H-2A workers that have come back for 26 years running. And that's an important part of our economy, and that's an important part of our community. What we do have to take a look at is Congressman Rouser and Senator Tillis have both sponsored legislation to freeze the H-2A wage increase. There's a 6% automatic wage increase on H-2A labor every year. Next year, the minimum wage for H-2A labor is $14.16. Combine that with fertilizer and diesel, and you're going to wonder why your sweet potato costs so much next Thanksgiving.
Jessica, we'll start with you on this question and work down this way and go back to the other end. And certainly feel free to disagree with my premise of the question here. But it seems to me that with Republicans, there is a tension with big tech in that we generally don't favor overregulation and government involvement in the free market system. Nobody has to get on Facebook. Nobody has to get on Twitter or Instagram. At the same time, this is having an enormous effect on the ability for both Republicans to communicate, the appropriate communications of children. lot of directions you can go with this, but I guess my question is, if you were a member of the House of Representatives, what would be your view on what Congress needs to do anything about quote unquote big tech, if anything?
It is no longer a social media platform, it's a social media publisher, and that's where it starts. Vladimir Putin has a Twitter account. Donald Trump doesn't. They pulled the New York Post down off of Twitter unless they agreed to take down Hunter Biden's laptop story. Do you remember it? What happened 2 days ago? Oh, I'm so sorry. Turns out that was just we were working on the election. I mean, turns out that was the truth. Social media is no longer a platform. Social media is a publisher, and as a publisher, it should be held to the same standards as any other publisher. And as your congressman, I will repeal Section 230.
Thank you. Start with this one and go this way. We're going to ask you.
Oh, no, I was just saying, these are great questions.
Oh, well, blind squirrel in a nut, you know. We're going to go about 2 or 3 more questions and then closing statements. We want to be appreciative of everybody's time today, and thank you for being here. Chad, we'll start with you. President Trump remains one of the most popular figures in the Republican Party. He has endorsed one of the candidates that chose not to attend this forum today. On the other hand, Mr. Trump continues to focus much of his anger on the previous election, and he continues to be a divisive figure in the country. What is the proper role of the former president in the modern day Republican Party and in this race in particular?
So I appreciate the attention that the president's brought to this race. This race is one of the most important congressional races in the United States of America because this race very well may determine the balance of power in the U.S. House. The Democrats knew the only way that they could slow the red wave is to take some water out of the pool. So they went through redistricting and they took at least 2 red seats out of the pool by, doing what they do with the redistricting. So I'm glad President Trump is involved in our race and takes an interest in our race because our race is important. Our community is important to the future of the nation. In 2016, y'all remember Eric Trump and Laura Trump came to Main Street in Benson? Yeah, that was me, right? In 2020, Donald Trump Jr. came to Clayton. We raised $250,000 for our judicial candidates in 2020. Remember that? That was us. The largest rally that the president had in 2016 at the farm, sang the national anthem. I am just as pro-Trump as any of them. And I welcome.
You sang the national anthem?
You ought to see it. I reposted that thing the other day. The voice of an angel.
Lord help us.
You should hear me in the shower. You should hear me in the shower.
First 3 bars.
There it is. There it is. So we welcome the influence because this is the most important race in the nation. However, I live right down 27 in Benson. It's where I was born and raised. It's where I'll be, right? I ain't going to Washington if you need me. 27 Highway 50 elevation right down the road, okay? And I, as a Johnston County Republican, I remember all too well back in 2016 when in the middle of the night, Karl Rove said, Johnston County has just reported and gone red. We can call North Carolina for Trump and projects Trump as the next president of the United States of America. So I'd like for him to, a little Johnston County endorsement in here. We thought he'd, return the favor, but we, I'm sorry. So, but we appreciate the attention that he's bringing to the race and look forward to highlighting it.
Thank you. That's everybody. So this new district that contains, I had a nice tour of it on the way down here today. The southern parts of Wake County, fast growing, moderate Republicans, a lot of liberals, the parts of Harnett County, all of Johnston and all of Wayne. It seems to me is somewhat of a microcosm of a lot of what we see in America and particularly North Carolina. Very fast growing suburbs, some parts of downtown core, farming and rural communities. So two-part question, and we'll go 90 seconds on this, and then we'll move to closing statements. How can you, as a member of Congress, bridge the urban-rural divide to effectively represent this community? And what about you makes you particularly talented and able to represent a district as such you are running in? And we'll start with Devan and come down this way, that way.
That's a phenomenal question. And with a quite simple answer, we'll represent both urban and rural because that's what we're going to Washington to do. You know, my dad went to Broughton High School, met my mom right down the street at St. Mary's in Raleigh, grew up there his whole life, followed her down to Johnston County. Good idea, right? Fell in love, married her, and that's where we start. I went to NC State, finished at NC State, and then moved back home to Johnston County to start our family. You know, this district isn't such a divide. This district is us. The people in this district grow up in Irwin, grow up in Dunn, grow up in Lillington, and go to Raleigh to go to Crabtree, and then go to Raleigh to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. This district's, the variation in this district is what makes this district as special as it is. So we'll look to emphasize whether it be Raleigh, Fuquay, Apex, and use those in the same way that we're going to fight for Benson and Brogdon and Bowie's Creek every day in Washington.
Thank you very much. That's going to wrap up our Q&A part of this. But before we move into closing sections, let's give a big round of applause for all these candidates. Speak for the people out here and the people watching online and the people who will read about this later, to say that, you know, the 13th is going to be well represented, and we appreciate your commitment to public service. We're going to go 1 minute for the closing statements, and since chivalry is still alive here in Harnett County, I'm going to start with the women. I'm going to go to Jessica, and then Renee, and then work back and end with Devan. So Jessica, 1 minute, close us out here. Thank you.
My name's Devan Barbour, and I humbly ask for your vote to represent you in Washington, D.C. as your next congressman. There's a lot of talk about Washington. There's a lot of talk about North Carolina. And next year, we will have the majority in the House of Representatives, and we will have a couple hundred folks that are going to look after the United States of America, and we're going to have a strong delegation to look after North Carolina. I'm running because I want to look after home. There's a lot of candidates in this race, and most of us are conservative. We all, you know, have most of the same guiding principles, but when you look at the candidates and research your candidates, look for the why. Why are you running? What's your motivation? My motivation is in the hallway, so they're not yelling and screaming in here in the background. Joke. My motivation is a hallway. I want to go to Washington. Of course, we're going to look after the United States. Of course, we're going to look after North Carolina, but we're going to look after the Burlington Industries and the Swift Denim plant that should have never left because of NAFTA. We're going to make sure that we get the share funding so that we can get new volunteer firefighters, and we're going to keep taxpayers' money in their pockets, not having to rebuild fire departments, and we're going to look after home. And I'd appreciate your vote to do that.
Thank you, man. Thank you to all of our candidates. Please be safe in your travels and good luck, and I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman.